Your hand is on the stove. The burner glows orange beneath your palm. You watch your skin begin to blister. The smell of burning flesh reaches your nose. You observe this with the detached curiosity of someone watching ice melt. There's no panic, no impulse to pull away, just data, temperature, texture. The scientific awareness that tissue is being destroyed at a cellular level. Your brain registers damage but produces no alarm. No screaming internal voice demanding you move. You lift your hand only because you've satisfied your curiosity, not because anything inside you insisted on survival. This is how your last day begins. You woke up 30 minutes ago without fear, not bravery, not courage. Those require acknowledging danger and choosing to face it anyway. What you have now is the complete absence of the neurological architecture that keeps humans alive. The amygdala, that ancient almond-shaped cluster of neurons buried deep in your brain, has gone dark. It no longer processes threat. It no longer floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. It no longer hijacks your prefrontal cortex when something could kill you. You are now a rational creature in a world designed to destroy rational creatures. The burned handprint on your palm doesn't hurt in the way it should. Pain exists, but the emotional weight that makes pain matter has evaporated. You run cold water over the wound with the mechanical efficiency of someone following instructions they've memorized but don't understand. In a functional brain, pain is inseparable from fear. They form a feedback loop. Pain signals danger. Danger triggers fear. Fear enforces learning. You touched a stove as a child and the fear-pain circuit burned that lesson into your neural pathways so deeply you've avoided it ever since. Until today, you dress without checking the weather. You leave your apartment without locking the door. You don't look through the peephole before opening it. These aren't acts of rebellion. They're the natural behavior of an organism that no longer calculates risk. Every human action is a negotiation between desire and danger. Remove one side of that equation and you get movement without meaning. Pure impulse dressed in the clothes of choice. The question isn't whether you'll die today. The question is which of the 1,000 invisible tripwires that crisscross your daily existence will be the one that kills you. Before I show you how this unfolds, tell me in the comments, what do you think would kill you first if you woke up without fear? A car, a person, your own decisions. Think about it. Then keep watching. The human brain is a prediction machine wrapped in fear. Every millisecond of consciousness, your amygdala scans the environment for threats your ancestors survived. That slightly raised voice in the coffee shop. The car approaching too quickly in your peripheral vision. The stranger whose gait suggests intoxication or aggression. The uneven step on the staircase. The color of food that might indicate spoilage. Your conscious mind notices almost none of this, but your fear circuits do. They've been doing this for 300,000 years. Refined by every human who lived long enough to reproduce because their amygdala kept them breathing. You no longer have this protection. You step into the crosswalk without looking. Not because you're distracted, you looked. You saw the cars. Your visual cortex processed the information perfectly. A sedan approaches at 40 miles per hour. Your rational brain calculates its trajectory, but calculation isn't caution. The driver sees you at the last second and locks the brakes. Rubber screams against asphalt. The car stops 18 inches from your body. The driver's face contorts in rage and terror. Adrenaline dumps into their bloodstream. Their hands shake on the wheel. They experience in 5 seconds what should have been distributed between both of you. You absorb none of the fear. They absorbed all of it. You continue across the street without acknowledging them. Why would you? Nothing happened. This is the first misconception about fearlessness. People imagine it would feel like power, like walking through the world untouchable, but power requires awareness of what you're overcoming. A cliff diver experiences fear and jumps anyway. That's courage. You would walk off a cliff the same way you'd walk through a door, not because you're brave, because your brain cannot distinguish between the two actions. Both are simply movements through space. You enter a convenience store. The cashier makes eye contact and you hold it without the automatic flicker of submission that governs primate hierarchy. Humans look away from sustained eye contact unless challenging for dominance or initiating intimacy. It's hardwired, inescapable, except you've escaped it. The cashier becomes uncomfortable. You don't notice their discomfort because you're not reading their face for threat cues. This is how microaggressions toward dangerous people begin. Not with intention, with absence. You reach across the counter to grab a lighter without asking. The cashier flinches. In their brain, your hand moving into their space without the normal negotiating signals suggests aggression. They don't know why they suddenly feel threatened. You're not being hostile, but you're violating the invisible mathematics of safe social distance and predictable behavior. Every human interaction is a dance of micro-retreats and advances, mediated entirely by mutual fear of conflict. You've stopped dancing. Everyone else still is. This makes you a foreign object in the social organism. You leave without paying for the coffee you opened and started drinking. Not theft in your mind. You simply didn't think about payment. Fear of consequences is what reminds you to pay. Social anxiety about being seen as a thief. Worry about getting caught. These aren't moral considerations. They're fear wearing the mask of ethics. Remove fear and you discover how much of your morality was just threat avoidance with better branding. By now, 2 hours have passed, you're still alive. This creates a dangerous illusion. Maybe fear was overrated. Maybe humans are too cautious. Maybe all those warnings and worries were just cultural programming keeping you small. This is what your rational brain tells you. It sounds reasonable because reason is all you have left, but reason is a beautiful liar. It can justify anything because it doesn't feel consequences until they arrive. Fear feels them in advance. That's its job. You decide to go to the park. The subway is faster, but you choose to walk because you notice a shortcut through an alley. You've avoided your entire life without consciously knowing why. That why was fear. The accumulated data of 1,000 subtle observations. Broken glass, poor lighting even during the day. The acoustic properties that would muffle sound. The lack of foot traffic. The positioning that creates blind corners. Your amygdala catalogued all of this and filed it under a void. That file is gone now. Halfway through the alley you encounter 3 men. Your visual cortex registers their body language, triangulated positioning, focused attention, blocking the exit trajectory. A normal person's nervous system would already be in pre-panic mode, cortisol rising, muscles tensing for flight, pupils dilating to capture more visual information, heart rate increasing to pre-oxygenate muscles. You feel none of this. You continue walking. One of them steps forward. You lost. Not a question, a probe, testing whether you understand the situation. Every social predator does this. They assess whether the target recognizes danger. Recognition creates complications. Witnesses remember people who seemed afraid. Police take reports from people who ran, but someone who doesn't react to threat signals. That's either someone too dangerous to touch or too stupid to matter. They need to determine which you are. No. You say simple, factual. You're not lost. They wait for you to explain further or change trajectory. You don't. This breaks the script. In normal predator-prey dynamics, the prey demonstrates awareness through appeasement or escape behavior. You demonstrate nothing. This actually makes them hesitate. Confusion is the predator's only natural deterrent. They didn't expect this response. You walk between them, close enough to touch. One reaches out, not to grab, to test. His hand lands on your shoulder. This is the moment when fear would flood your system so completely that you'd either run or fight or freeze. The 3 F's that kept your ancestors alive. You do none of these. You stop walking and look at the hand on your shoulder with mild interest, like examining an insect that landed on you. What the fuck is wrong with you, he says, is actually concerned now. Humans are exquisitely calibrated to detect other humans' emotional states. Mirror neurons fire when we observe fear in others, creating empathic resonance that regulates interaction. Your complete lack of fear registers as wrong at a neurological level. Uncanny valley territory. His grip loosens. You continue walking, they let you pass. Not because you were intimidating, because you were incomprehensible. Predators avoid prey they can't predict. It suggests variables they haven't accounted for. Disease, insanity, backup, better to let you go than solve the puzzle you represent. You've now survived your second potentially lethal encounter through sheer statistical luck and the confusion your absence of fear created in other people's threat assessment systems. This won't keep working. The universe doesn't owe you continued improbability. Every moment you persist without fear is borrowed time, and the interest rate is exponential. By noon, the subtle cracks are becoming fractures. You haven't eaten because hunger registers, but the urgency doesn't. You see food. You know intellectually that you need it, but need without the anxious pressure of survival is just abstract information. You pass restaurant after restaurant the way you'd pass furniture stores when you don't need furniture. Relevant but not compelling. Your phone has been ringing. Your mother, your friend, your boss. You see the calls, but the social anxiety that normally makes you answer is gone. The fear of disappointing people. The worry about consequences. The nervous energy that makes you respond to maintain relationships. All of it was fear-based. You let it ring because silence is easier than conversation, and you no longer have the background hum of anxiety telling you this will cause problems later. This is when you begin to understand what fear actually was. Not an obstacle to your authentic self. Not a cage limiting your potential. Fear was the invisible scaffolding holding your life together. Every deadline you met was fear of failure. Every shower you took was fear of social rejection. Every bill you paid was fear of consequences. Every kind word you spoke was partially fear of conflict. You weren't a person occasionally interrupted by fear. You were fear sculpted into the shape of a person, and now the sculptor is gone, and the shape is collapsing. You find yourself on a bridge, not because you walked here intentionally, because you've been walking without direction for hours, and this is where momentum carried you. The railing is low. 3.5 feet of weathered metal between the sidewalk and a 90-foot drop to the river below. You lean over to look at the water. All the way over. Your center of gravity shifts past the balance point. A normal person would feel their stomach drop, would feel the primal terror of falling, would jerk backward with involuntary muscle contractions controlled by the cerebellum, that ancient part of the brain that predates conscious thought. You feel nothing. You're fascinated by the water's surface, the way light fragments on the current. You lean further. Your feet leave the ground. For a moment, you're balanced on your hips against the railing. This is the moment. The razor's edge between alive and dead. You're not choosing to fall. You're simply not choosing to prevent it. There's a difference. One requires action. The other requires only absence. A hand grabs your jacket, pulls you back hard. You stumble onto the sidewalk. A jogger stands over you, chest heaving, eyes wide with the adrenaline of someone who just prevented a death. Jesus Christ, are you okay? Were you trying to? They can't finish the sentence. You stand up, brush off your jacket. I was looking at the water. Factual, true. The jogger searches your face for the emotional indicators that would make sense of what just happened. Suicidal ideation, drug intoxication, cry for help. They find nothing. Your effect is flat as still water. This frightens them more than if you'd been crying. You need to be more careful. They say careful. The word only has meaning if you can conceptualize danger. You nod because you understand this is the expected response. They jog away slowly, looking back 3 times. They'll think about you for weeks, wonder what you were. They'll never quite remember your face correctly. That's what happens when the brain tries to store information about something that violated its core predictions about human behavior. You continue walking. You've now survived 3 potentially lethal scenarios. The car, the alley, the bridge. You're building a dangerous data set. Each survival feels like evidence that fear was unnecessary. This is the ultimate cognitive trap. Survivorship bias at its most lethal. The absence of death is not proof of safety. It's proof of probability temporarily breaking in your favor. But probability always regresses to the mean, and the mean for human beings operating without fear is death within hours. The afternoon brings new complications. You enter a grocery store. The fluorescent lights hurt your eyes, but pain without fear is just sensation. Interesting but not actionable. You pick up items randomly. Raw chicken, expired yogurt, cleaning products that say toxic if ingested. Your visual cortex reads the words, but they don't connect to anything. Toxic is just a category, a label. The fear that would make you put it down isn't firing. A child runs past you in the aisle, crashes into your leg, starts to fall. You don't reach out to catch them. Not because you're cruel, because the automatic impulse to protect the vulnerable is fear-mediated. Fear of guilt, fear of social judgment, fear of harm coming to someone helpless. The child's mother catches them before they hit the ground. She looks at you with an expression that goes beyond anger. It's revulsion. You've triggered her deepest parental instincts by revealing yourself as something that doesn't protect children reflexively. She pulls her child away and you notice her hand is shaking. Not from anger, from fear. She's afraid of you correctly. You leave the store without purchasing anything because the social contract of commerce is enforced by fear of consequences. You've taken food from the shelves, consumed it while shopping. This is theft. But theft is only theft if you fear getting caught or care about the abstract concept of property rights. You don't. Security follows you but doesn't stop you. They're trained to identify threats. You don't move like a normal shoplifter. No furtive glances, no nervous energy, no hurry. You move like someone who doesn't believe in locks. This confuses them. They let you leave because confrontation with an unpredictable subject isn't worth a liability. The sun begins its descent. Golden hour light turns the city orange and amber. Beautiful, you register the beauty, but beauty without the fear of losing it is just optical stimulation. Sunsets matter because we fear darkness, because we fear time passing, because we fear death. Remove that fear and a sunset is just the earth rotating. Data without meaning. You should be terrified by now. Not of any specific thing, of what you've become, but you can't fear your own condition. That would require the circuit you've lost. Instead, you're walking into evening with the mild interest of someone watching a documentary about their own extinction. Narrator and subject. Observer and observed. The split between your intellectual awareness and your emotional absence is total. You know you're in danger. But knowledge without fear is trivia. Interesting but inert. A car swerves onto the sidewalk. Drunk driver or medical emergency or mechanical failure, it doesn't matter. The vehicle weighs 2 tons and it's moving at 30 miles per hour directly toward you. A normal person would already be moving. Would have seen the erratic driving 2 seconds ago and adjusted position. Would have registered the engine sound as wrong. Would have felt the danger before it became visible. You see it now. You calculate you have perhaps 1.5 seconds. This is enough time to move. Your muscles are capable of the necessary speed. Your brain knows the correct direction, but knowing isn't doing. Between stimulus and response, fear provides the voltage that converts information into action. You're missing that voltage. You watch the car approach with the same mild curiosity you had looking at the water from the bridge. Your last thought is noticing the make and model. How strange to die while thinking about automobiles. The impact happens too quickly for your conscious mind to process, but too slowly for it to end cleanly. Your body experiences the physics of sudden deceleration. Bones break in sequence. Organs compress and tear. Blood vessels rupture. Your brain, still conscious for seconds after the body has been catastrophically damaged, finally produces something like fear. Not in the amygdala that's still dark, but in the raw animal panic of dying. The chemicals of terror flood a system too damaged to use them. It's a sensation without purpose. Fear arriving after the moment when it could have saved you. Seatbelt on a crashing plane. Alarm on a burning building. Your body remembers what your brain forgot. The sky above you is deepening to purple. The sun touches the horizon. You can feel it leaving, not the warmth. The time, your time. Every human who ever lived died with their fear circuits intact. They died afraid, fighting, resisting. You're dying curious, observing, clinical until the very end. This is what it means to wake up without fear. Not to live fearlessly, to die meaninglessly because fear was never the obstacle. It was the meaning, the thing that made survival matter, made danger real, made life precious by making death possible. The world fades in stages. First color, then sound, then the boundaries of your body. The last thing you feel isn't fear. It's the recognition that you should have been feeling it all along. That every moment of this day was a gift from probability, and you spent it not knowing you were already falling. Fear is not the mind killer. Fear is the mind keeper. It's the evolutionary algorithm that converted your ancestors from protein into people. Every human alive today is the descendant of the most paranoid primates. The ones who heard predators in every shadow and found threats in every stranger. The calm ones, the fearless ones, the rational ones who calculated risk correctly but didn't feel it urgently enough. They're fossils now. Evolutionary dead ends with no one to remember them because they didn't live long enough to be remembered. We've built entire industries around conquering fear, self-help books, motivational speeches, therapeutic techniques to rewire the anxiety response, and they have their place. Clinical anxiety is real suffering. Phobias can become prisons. But underneath every fear reduction technique is the assumption that the goal is a better relationship with fear, not its elimination, because elimination is death dressed in the language of empowerment. Fear is your body's way of loving you, of fighting for you, of refusing to let you become a statistic without putting up resistance. Every racing heartbeat is your organism saying, not yet, not here, not like this. Every nervous stomach is a prediction model running millions of scenarios per second, calculating danger too complex for consciousness to process. Every moment of anxiety before a risk is your brain begging you to prepare, to consider, to remember that you're mortal and precious and worth protecting. The person who woke up without fear didn't die because they took risks. They died because they couldn't distinguish between walking through a door and walking off a bridge. Because survival requires discrimination, and discrimination requires the emotional weight that makes some choices matter more than others. Without fear, everything is equivalent: a stove and a handshake, a car and a conversation, a sunset and an ending. You are alive right now because you are afraid, because your great-great-grandmother heard a twig snap in the forest and ran before knowing what made the sound, because your great-great-grandfather avoided the stranger who smiled too widely, because a million moments of fear accumulated into the probability of your existence. You are not brave in spite of your fear. You are alive because of it. Fear is the price of consciousness. The tax evolution levies on creatures smart enough to imagine their own death. You can't have self-awareness without mortality awareness, and you can't have mortality awareness without fear. They're the same circuit, the same gift, the same curse. So when your hands shake before the presentation, thank them. They're trying to keep you alive. When your stomach drops at the edge of the cliff, honor it. It's doing exactly what 300,000 years of refinement designed it to do. When you hesitate before the risk, before the leap, before the choice that could change everything, that hesitation is not weakness. It's the wisdom of your body consulting the archive of every human who survived long enough to pass their caution down to you. The day you wake up without fear is not the day you start living. It's the day you start dying. And you wouldn't make it to sunset. If this video made you think, like and subscribe for more scenarios. And watch the previous simulation. What if you could hear everyone's thoughts for 24 hours? You wouldn't survive the second.